I heard the crack before I felt it. For a second there was only this weird empty sound in my head, like someone snapping a dry branch in the forest, and then the pain hit me so hard I thought I was going to throw up right there on the floor. My own son had my arm twisted behind my back, his fingers digging into my skin like claws, his breath hot on my cheek while he shouted something I couldn't even understand. My ears were buzzing. My knees gave out. I screamed his name. "Robert, please, you're hurting me." But he just twisted harder. Then the world turned white for a moment, pure white, no sound, no air, and when color came back, my arm was just hanging there, useless, like it didn't belong to my body anymore. I tried to move my fingers and nothing happened. Sigh, this can't be real, I remember thinking, but it was very real. The next thing I knew, he was dragging me down the hallway by my good arm, my feet scraping on the floor, my broken arm swinging at my side, every tiny movement sending fire up into my shoulder. I was crying and begging and gasping, half from pain and half from shock. This was my son. The boy I used to rock to sleep was now pulling me like I was a bag of trash he wanted to throw away. If I say it like that, it almost sounds like a bad joke, right? But there was nothing funny in his eyes. Only anger, only hate. He shoved me into the little storage room at the end of the hall. My back hit the wall, my legs slid out from under me, and I collapsed onto the cold floor. The smell hit me first. Bleach, damp rags, old dust. That stupid, ugly smell of a room no one cares about. I tried to get up with one hand, but my body wouldn't listen. My broken arm screamed if I even shifted a little. I looked up at him from the floor, my vision blurry with tears. "Robert, oh, please, I need a doctor." "You broke my arm." I sounded small, like a child, not like a 71-year-old woman who has lived through death, poverty, and grief. He stared down at me with a face I didn't recognize. "Learn your place, Mom," he said. Calm. So calm. It scared me more than his shouting. "You don't control this house anymore. If you ever touch my wife again, it's going to be worse." Then he closed the door. I heard the key turn from the outside, that little click that said, "You're not a person right now. You're a problem. I need to lock away." For a moment, I thought he would open it again. I waited, holding my breath. 1 second, 2, 5, 10, nothing. My stomach dropped. My throat closed. I pushed myself toward the door with my good hand and started hitting it with my fist. "Robert, open the door." "Please. It hurts. I can't move my arm. I'm begging you." My voice broke into ugly, raw weeping. I didn't even sound like myself anymore. I heard footsteps going away. His voice, muffled. Her voice, fake and soft. And then laughter. That sharp, high little laugh she always made when she thought she had won. Outside that door, in my own house, people were laughing. Inside, I was curled on the floor like some injured animal. You know what the worst part is? It wasn't the pain. Don't get me wrong, the pain was bad. My arm felt like it was full of glass. Every heartbeat was like someone was hammering nails into the bone. But the pain wasn't the worst thing. The worst thing was the silence that came after, when the shouting stopped, when the footsteps faded. Just me, my breathing, and the slow drip of water somewhere in the corner. Plop, 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 like a clock counting down to something I didn't understand yet. That silence felt heavier than my broken arm. It felt like the house itself was saying, "No one is coming for you this time." I leaned my head back against the wall and closed my eyes. If I moved even a little, the pain screamed. So I tried not to move at all. I focused on breathing in and out, in and out. Sigh. I let the air go slowly, like I could push the fear out with it. I tried to think straight, but my thoughts kept breaking, the same way my bone had broken. My son broke my arm. My son. I must have repeated those words 100 times in my head just to try to make them feel real. My son broke my arm because I touched his wife, because I dared to say out loud what he refused to see, that she was stealing from me, that she was robbing me blind right in my own home. And now here I was, locked in a cleaning closet like some disobedient child. My left arm was useless, swollen, hot, throbbing. The sleeve of my blouse was getting tight around it, and I could feel the fabric sticking to my skin with sweat. I tried to wiggle my fingers again and almost blacked out from the pain. Ah! A little sound escaped my lips. Half sob, half whimper. Tears kept sliding down into my ears as I lay there. I could hear my own heart pounding in my chest like it wanted to escape too. Outside, the sound of plates, voices, maybe even music. Were they still eating? Still talking? Still pretending everything was normal while I lay here like garbage? On my birthday, no less. Ha ha ha! Happy birthday to me, right? I don't know how long I stayed like that. Minutes, hours, it all blurred together in that dark little room with no window. Time doesn't move the same. When you're in pain, it stretches, then it jumps. One moment I was staring at the tiny line of light under the door. The next I was talking in my head to my husband, to my younger self, to the boy Robert used to be. Remember when you used to hug me just because you wanted to? I whispered, half laughing, half crying. Remember when you cried if I wasn't there to tuck you in? Weeping came in waves. Sometimes I would stop for a moment and think, okay, that's enough. I'm done crying. Then a new thought would hit, and the tears would come all over again. And then, slowly, my brain did something strange. It stopped thinking about the pain and started thinking about something else. Something sharp, something cold. Not anger, not yet. Something like clarity. I lifted my good hand to my chest, feeling the rough fabric of my apron. That old apron, the one I always wear when I cook, the one no one ever looks at twice. My fingers brushed over the front pocket, then slipped inside, and I felt it. A small, hard shape. My phone. I had forgotten about it. This morning, I had slipped it into the inner pocket I had secretly sewn on years ago because I didn't like leaving it out in the open. Habit saved me. My heart jumped. For a second, hope made my chest feel bigger. I pulled the phone out with my right hand, careful not to let it fall. The screen lit up my face, and the sudden light made my eyes sting. I blinked. Battery, enough. Signal, full. Thank God, I whispered, my voice shaking. I could call an ambulance. I could call the police. I could call my neighbor Brenda, who had seen part of what happened, who had screamed at the door that she would call the cops. I could call anyone. I stared at the contact list, my thumb hovering. My breathing quickened. Help. I needed help, yes. But as I sat there, feeling my arm pulsing with pain and humiliation burning in my chest, another feeling started to rise above everything else. Not fear, not sadness. Something darker, something stronger. I didn't just want help. I wanted justice. No. If I'm honest, in that moment, I wanted something even heavier than justice. I wanted them to feel even a small piece of what I was feeling on that dirty floor. I wanted his cold words, learn your place, to choke him in his sleep. I wanted her fake tears to turn into real ones. My thumb slid up past Brenda's name, past police, past doctor. It stopped on a name I hadn't seen in years. A name that had been sleeping in my phone, like a loaded gun hidden in a drawer. Richard Harris. My old lawyer, the man who had once helped me hold on to this house when my husband died and his family tried to strip us of everything. 15 years without a single call. And yet I had never deleted his number. Maybe a part of me always knew I might need him again. Weeping, I whispered to myself with a shaky laugh, wiping my face with the back of my hand. Mary, you old fool, look at you. My thumb pressed the call button. As it started to ring, my heart pounded so hard I could hear it in my ears. One ring. And then his voice came through the speaker, deep and calm, like no time had passed at all. "Mary," he said. He knew it was me just from the number. That alone made my throat close up. "Richard," I croaked, "it's me. My son. He broke my arm. He locked me in a closet. They've been stealing from me. I don't want to forgive them any more. I want this to end." There was a long, heavy pause on his side. I held my breath. Then he spoke, each word slow and solid. "Give me the address," he said, "and listen to me very carefully. Don't let those ungrateful people leave that house." The call ended, and for the first time in hours, I wasn't shaking from fear. I was shaking from something else entirely. Power. The kind of quiet, trembling power that crawls up your spine when you realize you're done being a victim. I stared at the phone in my hand, still glowing faintly. My reflection looked back at me through the cracked screen, eyes red, hair messy, lips trembling. "You look terrible, Mary," I whispered to myself, then let out a small ha-ha-ha that sounded half crazy, half free. My whole body was hurting, but inside something had switched on. Richard was coming. I didn't know how long it would take, but just knowing someone was on their way gave me a strange kind of calm. I leaned my head back against the cold wall and tried to breathe through the pain. Sigh. Each breath burned my chest, but I kept going. The darkness around me felt thicker now that the phone light had gone out again. I wanted to cry, but I had no tears left. My mind started wandering, floating somewhere between memories and misery. The image of Robert twisting my arm replayed again and again like a broken film reel I couldn't turn off. The look on his face, that pure, blind fury. It wasn't my son in that moment. It was a stranger wearing his skin. My sweet boy, the one who used to bring me dandelions from the garden, who used to beg me to stay up and tell stories about his father. That boy was gone. The man who broke my arm only saw me as an obstacle, a noise in his way, and her, Naomi, or whatever her name really was. She stood there while it happened, arms crossed, that tiny smile playing on her lips, the smile that always looked polite on the surface but hid a snake underneath. I should have known from the first day she walked into my house that nothing good would come from her. I remember that day so clearly. She came in with a fake little laugh, ha ha ha, and handed me a bunch of flowers that still had the price tag hanging from them. "For you, Mrs. Mary," she had said sweetly, but her eyes weren't looking at me. They were scanning the walls, the paintings, the furniture, measuring, estimating. That woman didn't come to love. She came to hunt. At first, I thought I was imagining things. I told myself I was being paranoid. She was young, maybe just careless, maybe nervous. But it started with small things, the missing cash, the jewelry that vanished, the whispers she made to my son when she thought I wasn't listening, and Robert, oh Robert, how quickly he turned against me, sigh. Every time I said something about her, he'd defend her like she was made of gold. "Mom, she's not stealing. You just forgot where you put it." He'd say it so casually, like he wasn't stabbing me straight through the heart. I let them live here because I thought I was helping him. He said it was too dangerous for me to live alone. Ha ha ha. Turns out the real danger was letting them move in. A sound snapped me out of my thoughts. Footsteps. I froze. My heartbeat jumped. They were close, right outside the door. I could hear their voices, muffled, but clear enough. "She's quiet now," Naomi said. "She should be," Robert answered. "She needs to learn." "Are you sure locking her up was smart?" she asked with fake concern. "Brenda saw everything." "Let her call the cops," he said sharply. "No one will believe her over me. I'll say Mom fell." Their footsteps faded again, and I felt something inside me twist. Not from pain, from disbelief. My son was planning a lie before I had even stopped bleeding inside. I looked down at my broken arm resting on my lap, swollen and bruised, and a laugh slipped out. It wasn't happy. It was bitter. The kind of laugh that tastes like salt and blood. Learn your place, Mom. I mimicked under my breath. Oh, sweetheart, you're about to see exactly where my place is. My phone buzzed suddenly, making me jump. It was a text, just one line. Richard, stay put. Don't open for anyone but me. That was all. No drama, no reassurance, just pure certainty. That was Richard, calm, deliberate, and terrifying when he wanted to be. I remembered what he'd said years ago after helping me win the house back from my husband's greedy relatives. If anyone ever tries to take what's yours again, Mary, you call me before you call God. I didn't fully understand what he meant back then, but now I did. Minutes passed, or hours, I can't say which. Pain changes time. Sometimes it flies, sometimes it crawls. Then a sound. Knock. Firm, purposeful, through the wall, I heard Robert's voice, confused this time. Who the hell is that at this hour? Naomi hissed. Ignore it. Another knock, louder. Then a voice, deep and steady. Open the door, now. My breath caught in my throat. That voice. I knew it. Richard. Naomi muttered something like, Who is that? Robert opened the front door. I heard the creak, and then Richard's tone changed. I couldn't hear every word, but I caught pieces. Lawyer, assault, kidnapping, then silence. My heart pounded so fast it hurt. And then the sound I had been praying for, the metallic click of the key turning in the lock. The door to the closet opened, and light spilled in like a blessing. I blinked hard, the brightness stabbing my eyes. Richard stood there, older, grayer, but just as commanding as I remembered. Mary, he said softly, kneeling beside me. His eyes moved over my broken arm, the bruises, the sweat on my forehead. He didn't look shocked. He looked angry, controlled anger, the kind that doesn't shout, it acts. Behind him, Robert hovered, pale and silent, like a boy caught doing something unspeakable. Naomi stood behind him, arms folded, pretending to be calm, but her lip was trembling. Get me an ambulance, Richard barked, still looking at me. She doesn't need. Robert started, but Richard snapped, not another word. Everything you say from now on can and will be used against you. Oh, the satisfaction that rushed through me right then. It didn't erase the pain, but it dulled it. My lawyer, my old friend, my savior from another lifetime, was here. He helped me stand up. I almost fell, but he caught me. The moment my broken arm shifted, I gasped and let out a soft, weeping sound, half from relief, half from agony. Richard took off his jacket and draped it around my shoulders. It's over now, he said quietly. They're not touching you again. You two should start praying, because when I'm done, you'll wish I had called the police first. That was the moment I realized this wasn't just about survival anymore. This was war. The ambulance siren screamed in the distance, getting louder every second until it drowned every other sound in the house. I was sitting on the couch, wrapped in Richard's jacket, shaking. My arm rested on a pillow, swollen, purple, crooked, almost unrecognizable. Naomi stood frozen near the doorway, her face pale, trying to act innocent, but her eyes darted everywhere. Robert? He just stood there, silent, like a boy who'd broken his favorite toy and didn't know how to fix it. Ha ha ha, I let out a shaky laugh. What's wrong, son? Don't like the sound of justice coming for you? He didn't answer. He couldn't even look me in the eye. Sigh. That silence between us hurt more than my arm. Richard stayed beside me, calm as ever, tapping something into his phone. Mary, the police are coming too, he said. You're not going anywhere alone tonight. I blinked at him through the pain. Police? I whispered. He nodded, eyes sharp. You were assaulted, Mary. You were held against your will. That's a crime, and I don't let criminals sleep in peace. Naomi finally snapped. She fell, Richard. She always. Enough, he said, his voice like thunder. You don't talk. Not another word. Her mouth opened, then closed. The only sound was the ticking clock and the distant siren. When the paramedics arrived, everything blurred. Lights, questions, faces. They lifted me carefully, my broken arm resting on a sling, my tears refusing to stop, weeping. That's all I remember doing. I cried so hard that one of the medics, a young woman, whispered, "It's okay, ma'am. You're safe now." But was I? After what my own son did to me, as they carried me out, I looked over Robert's shoulder one last time. He looked terrified, not of losing me, but of losing his control. For a second, I saw guilt flash in his eyes, just for a second. Then it vanished. Maybe that's what guilt looks like when it's too late. The hospital smelled like antiseptic and hopelessness. The bright white walls made my eyes hurt. A doctor with kind eyes examined my arm, gently touching the swollen spots. I winced every time his fingers brushed near the fracture. "Clean break," he said softly. "You'll need surgery to insert a metal pin. It's going to be okay, ma'am." Okay. Ha ha ha, I almost laughed again. Nothing about this was okay. Richard stayed with me the whole time. While nurses took blood tests and checked my vitals, he sat in a corner, typing notes on his laptop like a man preparing for war. "We'll get the x-rays," he said. "We'll get the photos, the witness statements. That woman will regret every lie she's told." "Richard," I whispered, my voice trembling, "I don't even want money back. I just want peace." He looked at me, his eyes softening for a second. "Peace comes after justice, Mary. Always after. When they finally gave me something for the pain, I felt my body loosen. My eyes started to blur. Just before sleep took me, I heard Richard speaking on the phone, his tone cold and precise. "Yes, officer, her son assaulted her. Yes, the wife witnessed it. We have evidence. No, she's not pressing charges yet, but I will if necessary. I'm her attorney." Then darkness swallowed me. I woke up hours later groggy. The room was dim, only a small lamp glowed beside me. My arm was wrapped in thick bandages, and I could feel the metal pin inside like an alien bone. Richard was still there, his jacket folded neatly on the chair, his eyes fixed on his phone screen. He looked tired, but focused. "Morning," he said when he saw me open my eyes. "Morning?" I whispered. "What time is it?" 4:30. You've been asleep for 7 hours. Surgery went well. The doctor said you're strong for your age." A small, tired awe came from my throat. "Oh, strong. Funny. I feel like I've been hit by a truck." He chuckled softly. "Well, you've been hit by worse. Your own blood." That sentence hurt, but it was true. He leaned closer. "Mary, I need you to tell me everything, from the very beginning, every theft, every insult, every time they made you feel like you were losing your mind. I'm building your case." So I told him everything. My voice cracked a dozen times. Sometimes I stopped mid-sentence because the memories felt like knives. Sometimes I laughed bitterly between tears. Ha ha ha! At how blind I'd been, how I mistook cruelty for care. How I let that woman make me doubt my own sanity. When I finished, Richard sat back, silent for a long time. Then he said quietly, "Mary, she's not just a manipulator. She's a professional." I frowned. "What do you mean?" He pulled out a thin folder from his briefcase. "I called a private investigator. We ran her name, Naomi Brooks. She doesn't exist. But Leona Barnes does, and she's been married twice before. Both husbands ended up penniless. One filed for fraud, another disappeared. My heart froze. I felt every bit of blood drain from my face. You mean she's a con artist, Mary. Your son didn't marry a woman. He married a thief. The hospital room suddenly felt smaller. My hands started trembling again. I let out a shaky breath. Sigh. So she planned this? Every step, Richard said. The charm, the sympathy, moving into your house, isolating you. Classic grooming pattern. You were her target. My stomach twisted. All the moments replayed in my mind. The missing jewelry, the sweet fake smiles, the way she always told me I was forgetting things. She made me feel crazy, I whispered, like I was losing my mind. Richard nodded slowly. That's how people like her win. They break your confidence before they break your bones. I turned my head toward the window. Dawn was breaking. The first light of morning crept across the hospital walls, turning the white into gold. My arm throbbed with each heartbeat, but for the first time in a long time, my mind was clear. She's going to pay for this, I said quietly. Richard smiled faintly. That's the Mary I remember. Outside, a bird chirped, one small sound of life after a night of hell. I thought my broken arm would be the end of me. But it wasn't. It was only the beginning of her downfall. I woke up from the fog of surgery to Richard's face leaning over me like a lighthouse in a storm, steady, serious, a little softer than I remembered, and when I saw the way his jaw tightened, I knew he had been working while I slept. He had that look. That means plans are being made, and it made something warm and dangerous bloom in my chest at the same time, like hope wrapped in a spine of steel. Sigh. The first thing I said was, "Did she run?" As if running would make everything better or worse, I didn't know which. And Richard let out a long breath and smiled that small, grave smile of his. "Not yet," he said. "But we're moving faster than she can run." I tried to laugh, a small ha-ha-ha that sounded like a cough, because humor felt like a luxury 2 days ago. He slid a thin folder across the bedside table. Inside were photos, printouts, bank records, and a list his voice called the map. He told me he had already recovered deleted photos from my phone, the ones Robert had wiped, and the images made my blood run cold all over again. My brooch, my little gold chain, the earrings placed on her dresser as if they were hers, the receipts from pawn shops, pictures of her at ATMs with my card, a list of checks signed in my name that I never signed, a bank account with deposits that had no explanation. Weeping, I murmured, because seeing it like that, proof laid out in neat stacks, made the old fear and the new fury sit side by side in my chest. Richard explained calmly, like a teacher telling a story, how he traced her phone, how he hired a private investigator who followed her for days and found a trail of marriages, name changes, small towns where older men suddenly lost everything. A pattern. "She is professional, Mary," he said simply, and the word felt heavy, like a verdict. I felt a strange mix of relief and a terrible, sharp grief. Relief, because I had been right, and that truth was finally a thing I could hold up in front of the world. Grief, because the truth also meant my son had been blind, or worse, willing. I pressed my good hand to my chest, and it shook. He told me about the bank orders he'd already set in motion, a freeze on my accounts, emergency court papers to stop any transfers, a quick injunction on the house paperwork so nothing could be signed away while we put everything into a legal lock. And I remember thinking how ridiculous and wonderful it felt to have my life handled like a case file, like someone had finally taken the wheel from the chaos and steered it toward safety. Richard moved like that. He didn't waste words. He'd also brought my phone to a friend who recovered the deleted images and sent copies to him. He had copies of receipts, where she'd paid cash for expensive items she couldn't possibly afford as a secretary, and he had a list of other women who had reported similar things in distant towns. "She's not just a liar," he said, tapping the page with his pen. "She's a pattern. We can tie her to more than your house. We can show intent." When he said intent, it felt like a rope tightening around the wild coil of what had happened to me. Everything snapped into place. The small thefts that everyone told me to forget, the way Robert laughed off my concerns, the nights I felt dizzy and foggy after tea she had made me. The pieces fit into a picture of slow, careful theft. I remembered asking my doctor at the hospital about the nights I had felt overly sleepy. He frowned and checked my notes, and there it was, a mild sedative found in my system that I never knew about, just a small amount, but given often enough to confuse my mornings and my memory. The thought of that made bile rise in my throat. Ha ha ha! I laughed, but it had no joy in it. Word moved faster than I could keep up. Richard called detectives, sat in on interviews, and wrote letters with authority that made judges move with speed. Brenda came to visit almost every hour, hand in hand with a thermos of tea, a pocketful of neighborhood gossip, and the kind of steady presence that made my knees stop shaking for a moment. She wept when she saw the photos of my jewelry in the box in that woman's closet. "Mary, you were not wrong," she said, wiping her face with the back of her hand, and hearing those words from someone who had known me since before Robert was born felt like a small balm and also a fresh sting. We talked strategy in whispers as if the house could still hear, Richard telling me to keep calm, to let the law move, and me thinking about how I wanted to move faster than law sometimes. A dangerous wish, hot and sharp. "Do not do anything reckless," Richard warned, more softly than I'd ever heard him speak, and I saw the memory of battles he'd fought for me years ago when he had saved my home from vultures. He'd been a bulldog then, and he was the same now, only older and somehow wiser about what to crush and what to preserve. One night, when the house was quiet and my arm throbbed in time with the old clock, Robert came by the hospital, eyes hollow and hesitant. He tried to speak, but his voice kept cracking. He wanted to apologize, to explain, to beg. I listened, my heart both aching and armored. He told me that after I was locked in, Naomi had left late that night with a car full of bags, and for the first time he'd sat alone and read a note she left behind, a cold, detailed letter in which she wrote she only married him for his access to the house, that she was sorry but not remorseful. She had laid out plans, names, amounts. Robert's fingers trembled as he showed me a scrap of paper, and for once there was no bravado, only naked shame. "I was an idiot," he said. "I should have believed you." Sigh. I felt something like old love twist with new grief. The child I raised had been wounded too, but that didn't undo the blow he gave me, the betrayal. I told him then, quiet and clear, "You hurt me more than anyone could imagine. Maybe someday I'll forgive you. Maybe I won't. Right now I need you to help me fix what she broke." He nodded, tearful, ready to do what he could. Richard kept working. He told me we would file civil suits for theft and fraud, and criminal charges for forgery and assault would be pursued, and he was already lining up witnesses, Brenda, neighbors, the hospital notes, the recovered photos, the ATM footage the bank had miraculously kept. He arranged for a security detail at the house so nothing more would vanish. The house felt protected for the first time in months, and I cried quietly. Not the ragged crying of the closet days, but a softer, steadier kind, the sort that means a broken thing is being put back together. Weeping, I whispered into my pillow because the pain of my arm would be with me, but the pain of betrayal would not have the last word. And yet, even as we built the case, Naomi's ghost hung over everything. The investigator found aliases, small charges in other states, a pattern of moving, taking, and disappearing before victims realized what had happened. It felt like peeling wallpaper to find filth behind it. Each layer we pulled away revealed a colder, more deliberate person than I had imagined. "She thinks she can threaten you from prison," Richard said once, handing me a copy of one of her notes where she'd written, "I'll see you when I get out," and I looked at that paper and felt nothing but an odd, fierce amusement. Ha ha ha, let her leave a shadow on paper. We had light now. Rehook. I had called for justice from a dark place on the closet floor, and now the wheels were turning. The law, the evidence, the arrests to come. But this path to truth would open a door I had kept locked for years, and when that door swung wide, none of us could guess how much would tumble out with it. The morning after the charges were filed, I sat by the window of my hospital room, sipping weak tea with my good hand. The sunlight crept across the bed sheets, pale and warm, and for the first time in weeks I felt the tiniest piece of calm. My arm ached under the cast, a heavy reminder of everything, but there was something else growing inside me now, determination. "Sigh, you're not going to bury me, not this time," I whispered to myself, and that whisper felt stronger than any scream I'd made in that dark closet. A knock came at the door. Richard walked in, dressed in his usual charcoal suit, a folder tucked under his arm, and that calm, steady look on his face. "You're going home today," he said, smiling faintly. "Home?" I repeated, my stomach tightening. "That house doesn't feel like home anymore." He nodded slowly. "That's why I had it cleaned out. Security system installed. Locks changed. The police have taped off the upstairs rooms for investigation. No one goes in or out without my permission. I didn't know whether to laugh or cry. You're turning my house into a fortress," he smirked. "Only until the snake is caught." That snake, Naomi, was now officially on the run. The police had issued a warrant. The investigator had tracked her to another state using a fake ID and a car she bought with my money. "We'll get her," Richard said confidently. "She's smart, but she's sloppy when she's nervous." "Ha ha ha," I chuckled softly. "She never looked nervous to me." He looked at me seriously. "Then she's about to." Her face lit up when she saw me, though her eyes were still swollen from all the crying she'd done for me. "Ah, Mary," she whispered, hugging me gently. "I brought cookies." "The nurses said you were starting to smile again." I couldn't help but laugh, a broken, fragile laugh that felt good in my chest. "You and your cookies might heal me faster than the doctors." She winked. "Cookies and revenge, darling. Two best medicines I know." The three of us, me, Richard, and Brenda, drove back to my house that afternoon. The ride was quiet at first. I stared out the window, watching the familiar streets pass by, the ones I'd walked for decades. Everything looked the same, but I wasn't the same. When we pulled into the driveway, my chest tightened again. The curtains were open, sunlight spilling out. The same house that once smelled of fresh bread now smelled of betrayal. "Take your time," Richard said softly as he opened the door for me. The moment I stepped inside, a wave of memories hit me so hard I had to grab the wall for balance. This was where Robert took his first steps, where we had Christmas dinners, where my husband and I danced once when we thought no one was watching. Now, those memories felt like ghosts brushing past me. The cleaning crew had done their job. The walls were fresh, the carpets replaced, but the upstairs still held her scent, expensive perfume mixed with rot. Brenda held my arm, whispering, "Don't go up there, not yet." I nodded. Richard moved through the house with the quiet focus of a soldier. He pointed out the new locks, the alarm panel, the cameras he'd installed at every entrance. "You're safe here now," he said, "and if she even steps within a mile of this place, we'll know." I looked at him, a small smile trembling on my lips. "You always did have a flair for drama," he chuckled. "I prefer to call it thoroughness." For the next few days, I stayed in the downstairs guest room. Brenda slept over on the couch. We drank tea late at night and talked about everything. Old times, our kids, the kind of small talk that kept me from sinking too deep into my own thoughts. But sometimes, in the middle of a quiet moment, I'd hear something upstairs, a creak, a door shifting, and my heart would freeze. "She's gone, Mary," Brenda would whisper. "Don't let her haunt you." But it wasn't Naomi I was hearing. It was my own fear, the echo of what she did to me. 3 days later, the phone rang. "Richard, they found her." "Where?" "Small town in Nevada, living under another name. She's already in custody." "And Mary," he paused, "we found the money, most of it. She didn't even have time to move it." A sound came out of me, half sob, half laugh. "Ha ha ha," weeping. "You're serious?" "Every cent, almost," he said. "You're getting your life back, piece by piece." When I hung up, I pressed the phone to my chest and closed my eyes. The tears came again, but this time they were different. They didn't burn. They washed. I felt Brenda's hand on my shoulder, and she whispered, "Cookies and revenge, Mary." Works every time. 2 weeks later, Richard took me to court. Naomi, or rather Leona Barnes, was brought in wearing handcuffs. No makeup, no fake smile, just a pale, bitter face. When she turned and saw me sitting there, she froze. Her eyes narrowed. For a second, the old venom flickered in them, but it didn't scare me anymore. I stared right back at her and smiled, calm, steady, unbroken. The prosecutor listed every charge: theft, fraud, forgery, elder abuse. Her lawyer tried to play sympathy, but the evidence spoke louder than his voice. My photos, the bank records, Brenda's testimony, even Robert's confession. Piece by piece, her little empire of lies crumbled. When the judge read the sentence, 7 years in prison, I didn't cheer. I just exhaled. Sigh. A long, trembling sigh that carried 2 years of pain with it. Leona looked at me one last time as they led her away. Her lips moved, almost whispering. I didn't need to hear it to know what she said. "This isn't over." I smiled sadly. "Oh, it's over," I whispered back. "For you." Outside the courthouse, the wind was cool and soft. Richard stood beside me, adjusting his tie, while Brenda linked her arm through mine. "Well," she said cheerfully, "now that justice is served, how about some real cake this time?" "Ha ha ha," I laughed. "As long as no one throws it at me." Richard looked at me, half smiling. "You know, Mary, not many people come out of something like this standing tall." I looked at him, the city light glinting in his glasses. "I didn't just stand, Richard." I rose, and as we walked away from that courthouse, my arm still aching, my heart still tender, I realized something. Pain breaks bones, yes, but it also hardens the spirit, and mine had turned to steel. I thought the story ended with her sentence, but life has a way of testing you again, and the next test came from the person I least expected, my own son. It was a few weeks after the sentencing when the silence finally felt too loud, the kind of silence that sits in your chest, heavy and awkward, like someone waiting to say something but never does. I had started sleeping again, eating again, even laughing a little with Brenda. Mostly at small, stupid things, like her teasing the new security guard for looking too serious. But every time I walked through the house, I saw Robert's ghost, not dead, but gone in a different way. He hadn't called since that day at the hospital, not a message, not a word, and even though I told myself I didn't care, my heart twisted a little every time the phone buzzed and it wasn't him. Sigh. There are wounds that no doctor can see, and a mother's heart carries most of them. Then one evening, right when the sky turned gold and the city started to hum with the sound of life again, I heard a knock on the door, slow, hesitant. 3 gentle taps. For a moment, I froze. It couldn't be. I walked to the door, my pulse rising, and there he was. Robert, standing on the porch with messy hair, red eyes, and a face that looked 10 years older than the last time I saw him. "Mom," he said softly. His voice cracked like dry wood. I didn't move. I just looked at him. My broken arm had healed enough to move now, but seeing him there made a different kind of ache spread through me. "Why are you here, Robert?" I asked quietly. He swallowed hard. "I didn't know where else to go." A bitter ha-ha-ha escaped my lips. "You had somewhere else once, when you threw me into that closet, remember?" His face fell. He stepped forward, but I lifted my good hand slightly, a silent wall between us. "Don't," I said. "Not yet." He nodded, eyes wet. "I know. I deserve that." He looked at the floor like a child caught lying. "She used me, Mom. She played me, and I let her. I thought I was protecting her, but I was protecting a devil." I wanted to scream, "You think I didn't try to tell you that?" But I didn't. I just let out a long breath, sigh. "You broke more than my arm, Robert." He nodded again, trembling. "I know, and I'll spend the rest of my life trying to fix it, if you let me." I wanted to stay angry. Really, I did. But looking at him standing there, stripped of all that pride, all that arrogance, looking like the little boy who used to bring me flowers from the garden, something in me cracked again, not with pain, with sadness. "Come in," I whispered. He stepped inside like a man entering a church, slow, quiet, respectful. The air between us was thick with everything we hadn't said. I made us tea, though my hand shook a little as I poured it. We sat across from each other at the kitchen table, the same table where everything had fallen apart. The silence was unbearable until he finally said, "I kept hearing your voice in my head, Mom." After she was gone, every time I looked in the mirror, I saw what I did. I saw your face that night, and it won't stop haunting me. His voice broke. He pressed his palms to his face and started crying, weeping, real tears, the kind you can't fake. For a moment, all I could do was stare. The same hands that hurt me were shaking now, begging for forgiveness without words. "You hurt me," I whispered. "I know." "You betrayed me. I know," he said again, choking. "And I wish I could undo it. I wish I could take it all back. But I can't. I just need you to know I'm sorry." The words hung in the air like smoke, heavy, honest, painful. I felt a tear slide down my cheek. Oh, my voice was small when I spoke. "Do you remember the day your father died?" He looked up, confused. "Yes, I told you something that day," I said. "I told you a man's true strength isn't how hard he can fight, but how fast he can admit when he's wrong." I smiled faintly through tears. "You finally learned that, didn't you?" He nodded, crying harder now. I reached across the table with my good hand and touched his wrist. It was a small touch, cautious, trembling, but it was enough. He flinched like he didn't deserve it. Maybe he didn't. But forgiveness isn't about who deserves it. It's about who needs it more. "That's all I can promise right now." He nodded again, whispering, "That's enough." We sat there in silence, sipping our tea, both crying in the quietest way possible. It was messy, awkward, and strangely peaceful. Then he said something that made my heart stop. "She's been writing to me from prison." I looked up sharply. "What?" "She sends letters. Says she'll make things right when she gets out." I could feel the blood drain from my face. "Sigh, Robert, you can't believe a word she says." "I don't," he said quickly. I didn't know what to do with them." "Burn them," I said coldly. "Every single one." He nodded slowly, and I saw the fear in his eyes, not of her, but of himself, of how easily she'd controlled him before. We talked for hours that night, about my recovery, about his guilt, about the future. Somewhere between tears and tea, something fragile started to rebuild. Not trust, not yet, but a bridge of understanding. When he finally stood to leave, he hugged me gently, careful not to touch my healing arm. "I'll come back tomorrow, okay?" I nodded. We'll see. After he left, I sat alone for a long time, staring at the quiet house. The moonlight pooled across the floor, soft and silver. My hand brushed the edge of the table where he'd once slammed his fist. Ha, ha, ha! I laughed softly to myself, wiping my tears. What a story, Mary. What a mess. But as the night deepened, I looked at the door he'd walked out of and whispered, maybe this time he'll come back as the son I remember. Then my phone buzzed on the table. A new message, unknown number. I frowned, opened it, and froze. You won't like what he finds next. My hand went cold. My heart began to pound. It wasn't signed, but I didn't need a name to know who it was. I thought prison would silence her. But the devil doesn't need freedom to make you bleed. She just needs your number. The message glowed on my screen like a drop of poison. For a moment, I just stared at it, my mind refusing to believe what my eyes were showing me. Tell your lawyer to stop digging. You won't like what he finds next. I read it again, then again. My hands started trembling so badly I nearly dropped the phone. It was late, 12:47 a.m., the kind of hour when the world feels too still, when even the clock ticking sounds like footsteps. I could almost hear her voice saying it, calm, smug, dangerous. Leona. My half-stealth footsteps. She's in prison, Mary. She can't touch you, I whispered to myself, but deep down a colder voice answered, prison never stopped people like her, not when they know too much. I didn't sleep that night. I just sat there by the window, the moonlight brushing over my cast as I scrolled through the message again and again, wondering what she meant. What Richard might be about to uncover that I wouldn't like. Was she bluffing? Or was there something even darker hidden in this story that none of us had seen yet? By morning, my stomach was in knots. I called Richard the moment the sun rose. He answered on the second ring, voice calm as always. Good morning, Mary. It's not good, I said sharply, trying to steady my voice. She texted me. Last night, there was a pause on the line, long enough for me to feel it. Leona? Yes. From some unknown number. Said you should stop digging. That I won't like what you find next. He exhaled slowly. Sigh, Mary, listen to me. She's playing with you. I'll handle this. Don't answer. Don't delete it. Just forward it to me. I did as he said. My fingers were still shaking as I sent the screenshot. Within minutes, Richard replied with a short text. I'll look into it. Sit tight. Easier said than done. The next few days crawled by like ghosts in molasses. I jumped at every sound. The mail slot clattering, the phone buzzing, the creak of the wooden floor under my feet. Brenda came over with her usual sunshine energy, but even she could feel the tension in the air. You're pale, Mary, she said, sitting beside me on the couch. I forced a weak smile. Just tired. You're scared again, aren't you? I looked at her, eyes tired. She's in prison, Brenda, and yet I still feel like she's in this house. Brenda reached out and squeezed my hand. You survived her once. You can survive her again. Before I could answer, my phone rang. Richard, Mary, I need to see you, he said, voice lower than usual. It's about that message. My chest tightened. What did you find? Not over the phone. I'll come by this evening. When he arrived, he looked different. Not panicked, but serious in a way that made me nervous. He set his briefcase down on the table, took off his glasses, and rubbed his temples. You were right. The message came from a phone registered under a fake name. It was sent from inside a correctional facility, using a smuggled SIM card. I felt my breath catch. So it was her. Yes. He looked straight at me. But that's not all. He opened his briefcase and slid a thin folder toward me. I hesitated before opening it. Inside were documents, bank records, property papers, things I didn't recognize. These are in your name, Richard said quietly, but you didn't sign them. They're dated 2 years ago, forged signatures. I frowned, confused. 2 years ago? But that's before she married Robert. He nodded slowly. Exactly. That's why I think she's been planning this a lot longer than we thought. I stared at the pages, my heart pounding. You mean she targeted me before she even met my son? He leaned forward. My throat tightened. Sigh. So she didn't just marry him for money. She married him to finish what she started with me. Richard didn't speak for a moment. Then he said softly, Mary, there's something else. There was another name on those early documents, someone who helped her file them. A co-signer. The signature matches someone you know. My hands went cold. Who? He hesitated, then slid another paper toward me. At the bottom, under the fake company name, was a signature. My eyes widened, my chest constricted. Robert, my son's name, his handwriting, his signature. No, I whispered. No, that's not possible. Richard's voice was calm but firm. We're verifying, but it looks legitimate. Either he helped her in the beginning, or she forged his signature to make it look that way. I pressed my fingers to my forehead. My pulse was roaring in my ears. She's trying to destroy him completely, to destroy both of us. Richard nodded. Exactly. That's why you can't talk to her. Can't respond to her messages. Can't play her game. She feeds on reactions. The more you fear her, the stronger she feels. I leaned back in the chair, exhausted, my heart pounding against my ribs. So what now? Now, he said, standing up, we turn her message into evidence. We show the judge she's violating communication restrictions. We tighten security. We finish what she started, only this time we end it on our terms. Ha ha ha. I laughed softly, the kind of laugh that tastes like iron. You sound like you've done this before. Richard smiled faintly. But not for someone I actually care about. I looked at him, surprised, then smiled weakly. Well, then you better win this for me, he chuckled. Mary, I already have. She just doesn't know it yet. After he left, I sat by the window again. The house was quiet. The city lights glowed faintly in the distance. My phone sat on the table, dark and still. I reached for it once just to look. The message was still there, her words frozen on the screen like a curse. Tell your lawyer to stop digging. You won't like what he finds next. Not because I was afraid, because I refused to let her voice live rent-free in my house any longer. Then I turned off the phone completely and whispered into the dark. You broke my arm. You broke my trust. You broke my peace. But you'll never break my will. And for the first time in months, I slept. I thought that message was the last shadow she'd ever cast on my life, until the next morning, when I opened my front door and saw a single red rose lying on my welcome mat. I stared at the rose lying on my doormat, the world around me shrinking into a tight, pulsing silence. A single red rose, fresh, perfect, no note, no name. Just the kind of red that makes your stomach twist because you don't know if it's meant as love or a warning. For a few seconds I couldn't even move. My fingers trembled on the doorknob, my heart pounding so loud I could hear it in my ears. The morning sun touched the petals, and for a moment it looked like it was bleeding. Sigh, I whispered to myself. No, it can't be her. She's in prison. But my gut didn't believe that. I bit down slowly, using my good arm for balance, and picked it up. The stem was freshly cut, not from a shop, from a garden. There was still dew on the petals. I turned it in my hand, and then I saw it, a small piece of folded paper tied with a thin black thread around the stem. My breath hitched. I untied it carefully, my fingers trembling. Inside, written in neat, slanted handwriting, were 4 words. Did you miss me? My whole body went cold. Ha ha ha! I let out a short, nervous laugh that cracked halfway through. She's playing games again, I muttered. Even from behind bars, I stepped back inside the house, locked the door, and called Richard immediately. He picked up after 1 ring. Mary? Richard, my voice was shaking. Someone left a rose at my door. There's a note. It says, "Did you miss me?" A pause. Then his voice, low and steady. "Don't touch anything else. I'm coming over right now." 15 minutes later, he was there, faster than I thought possible. He stepped in, took 1 look at the rose on the table, and exhaled sharply. "It's meant to rattle you." "Well," I said with a shaky smile, "mission accomplished." He slipped on gloves from his briefcase, took the rose carefully, and sealed it in a plastic bag. "We'll test it for prints." She could have asked someone to do this for her. "She's still in prison, isn't she?" "Yes," he said, frowning. "But her influence may not be." Weeping. The tears came without warning this time. "Why won't she just stop, Richard? Why can't she leave me alone?" "Because you beat her, Mary, and people like her can't stand losing. They'd rather haunt you than admit defeat." I wiped my eyes with the back of my hand. "So what do we do now?" He looked out the window, thinking. "We fight smarter. I'll call the warden, check her visitation and communication logs. If she has someone helping her on the outside, we'll find them." He turned back to me, eyes calm but fierce. "She wanted to scare you, but she just gave us proof she's still playing games, and that's going to bury her deeper than any cell." I nodded slowly, taking a deep breath. Sigh. "Let her play then. This time, I'm not the same woman she hurt." That night, I couldn't sleep again. Every sound made my heart jump. The refrigerator hum, the wind brushing against the window. I sat in bed, staring at the shadows on the ceiling, whispering to myself, "You can't hurt me any more, Leona." But part of me still felt her, like her presence was stitched into the air. The next morning, Richard called again. His tone was sharp this time. "Mary, are you sitting down?" My stomach dropped. "What happened?" The warden confirmed it. "She hasn't had phone access for over a week, but she did receive 1 visitor yesterday, a man. He signed in under a false name, but we traced his face from the security camera." I held my breath. "Who is he?" Richard's voice went quiet. "Your son." The room spun. No, that can't be right. Robert wouldn't. He did, Mary. He visited her yesterday afternoon. I stood frozen, gripping the edge of the counter, my knees weak. "Why?" I whispered. "Why would he do that?" "I don't know," Richard said, "but it changes things." I hung up before I could even think, my fingers numb. The phone slipped from my hand and clattered on the floor. Robert, my son, the same man who wept in my kitchen, begged for forgiveness, swore he was done with her, had gone back. "Ha ha ha," I laughed, but it sounded broken, hollow. "Oh, Robert, you fool." Hours later, when he finally called, I didn't answer the first 3 times. On the 4th, I picked up. "Mom," he said quietly, "before you say anything, please listen." "I don't want excuses," I said, my voice shaking. "Why did you see her?" "I needed closure," he said. "I needed to hear her admit it, Mom. I thought if I faced her, it would end everything." "End?" I snapped. "Robert, that woman doesn't end things. She infects them." Then he said something that made my blood run cold. "She said something, Mom, something about Dad." I froze. "What about him?" "She said Dad's death wasn't an accident, that she knew things about it. I didn't believe her, but she said Richard might." My whole world tilted. I could barely breathe. Your father died 15 years ago, Robert. A heart attack. There's nothing to know. I know, he said quickly, but the way she said it, it didn't sound like a bluff. I think that's what she meant by what you won't like. I pressed my hand to my chest, my heart thudding painfully. No, I whispered. She's lying. She's twisting everything. She always does. Maybe, he said, but what if she's not? I ended the call without saying another word. For hours I sat at the kitchen table, staring at the photo of my husband that hung by the door. Shy. His smile in that picture, warm, easy, suddenly felt like it was mocking me. Could she be telling the truth? Was there something Richard hadn't told me? Or was this just her final trick? The last poison from a woman who refused to let go. That night, I dreamed of my husband's face. He was sitting beside me, looking the way he did the day before he died, tired, quiet, distant. He leaned close and whispered, "You're not done yet, Mary." I woke up with tears in my eyes, heart pounding, the echo of his voice still in my ears. I thought the war with Leona was over, but now the ghosts she left behind were starting to whisper, and one of them carried my husband's name. Morning light slipped through the curtains, soft and golden, but it did nothing to warm me. I sat in the same spot where I had cried, laughed, and survived too many things already, the kitchen table. My tea had gone cold. The photo of my husband stared down at me from the wall. That familiar smile that once made me feel safe now looked like a secret I hadn't been told. Sigh, what if she's right? I whispered into the empty room. The thought twisted in my gut like a knife. For 15 years, I had lived believing he died peacefully in his sleep. No suspicion, no signs, just a heart that stopped beating too soon. But now, with Leona's voice echoing through my mind, doubt began to crawl under my skin. I couldn't stand it. I picked up the phone and called Richard. He answered quickly, his tone careful. "Mary, I need to ask you something," I said, my voice shaking. "When my husband died, was there anything unusual about it?" There was a pause, long enough to make my heart skip. "Why are you asking that?" he finally said. "Because Leona told Robert you know something about his death. She said it wasn't an accident." I heard his breath hitch just for a second. "Mary, she's trying to break you again." "Then tell me she's lying," I snapped. Another silence. My grip tightened around the phone. "Richard," I said quietly, "please." When he finally spoke, his voice was low, almost regretful. "Your husband didn't just die in his sleep. He overdosed. But I never told you because the doctor classified it as a natural heart failure to protect you. He had medication in his system, too much. It could have been an accident, or it could have been." I cut him off, my throat tightening. "Or it could have been intentional." I pressed my palm over my mouth to stop the sound that escaped me, half gasp, half sob. "Why didn't you tell me, Richard? I had the right to know." "You were grieving," he said gently. "You just lost him." I thought I was doing the right thing. "Ha, ha, ha." The laugh came out hollow. "You mean you decided for me, you and the doctor. How kind." "Mary." "No," I said firmly. "Don't. Just don't." I hung up. The tears came fast, spilling down my face in hot waves. Everything, every piece of my life, felt like it had been built on lies. My husband's death, my son's betrayal, Leona's deception, Richard's silence. I thought I had found closure, but now it felt like the floor had opened again beneath me. For hours, I sat there, numb. The house was quiet, too quiet. Every sound felt amplified. The ticking clock, the faint hum of the fridge, the wind tapping against the windows. I felt like the walls were breathing with me. Then, around noon, a soft knock came at the door. I hesitated. Then opened it. Robert stood there again, his eyes red. "Mom, I heard about what she told you. I shouldn't have told you what she said. I didn't know what to do." I stared at him. "She knew something real, Robert. She used it to reach me again." He looked startled. "You mean about Dad?" Richard just confirmed it. It wasn't a heart attack. It was an overdose. Robert's face went pale. Oh, my God. He leaned against the door frame, his hands shaking. "Mom, you think she had something to do with it?" "I don't know," I whispered, "but she knew details she shouldn't have. Things no one ever told me." Robert rubbed his face, pacing. "She must have found those records somehow. Maybe Richard's files got hacked, or someone inside the hospital." "She's playing us," I said suddenly. "All over again. She's pulling the strings from behind bars." He stopped pacing and looked at me with eyes full of fear and guilt. "What if she's not just playing, Mom? What if she's still planning?" That thought sent a chill straight through me. I wrapped my cardigan tighter around my shoulders, my broken arm aching under the sling. "She's in prison, Robert. She can't reach us." But even as I said it, I didn't believe it. That night, I couldn't sit still. I went to my husband's study, a room I hadn't entered in years. The smell of dust and old books filled the air. The desk was still exactly as he left it, papers stacked neatly, his old fountain pen beside a half-finished crossword puzzle. I sat in his chair, running my fingers over the surface, and whispered, "What did you hide from me?" Something made me open the drawer. Inside, beneath an old stack of receipts, was a small brown envelope with my name on it. My heart pounded as I opened it. Inside were bank statements, old, faded, and a note in my husband's handwriting. "If something happens to me, don't trust Richard completely. There are things he knows that I couldn't fix." My stomach dropped. My husband, the man who had trusted Richard with everything, had written that. I slumped back in the chair, the room spinning around me. "No," I whispered. "No, this isn't possible." Tears blurred my vision as I reread the note. My husband's words, his warning, his doubt. Suddenly, I wasn't sure who the real enemy was anymore. Ha ha ha. I laughed bitterly through my tears. "Congratulations, Leona. You've managed to poison every memory I had left." I folded the note carefully, tucked it back into the envelope, and held it to my chest. The paper felt warm against my skin, like his voice still lived inside it. Then I whispered into the darkness, "If there's truth buried here, I'll find it myself, because maybe the past wasn't done with me yet. I thought Leona was my only monster, but now it felt like my husband's ghost and Richard's silence were part of the same story. And the worst part, I had no idea who to believe anymore." I didn't sleep that night. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw that envelope again. My husband's handwriting, the warning in those uneven lines, the words that now sat in my heart like a splinter I couldn't pull out. Don't trust Richard completely. The man who had saved me, the man who had protected me, the only person I thought was still on my side. I sat on the edge of my bed, the house dark and silent around me. The clock ticked softly in the hallway, steady and cruel, marking the hours I hadn't slept, weeping. The tears came slow this time, almost calm. I wasn't just broken. I was tired. So tired of fighting shadows, tired of surviving wars I didn't start. But exhaustion has a strange way of turning into focus. By sunrise, I had made a decision. If there was truth buried in all of this, if my husband's death, Leona's manipulation, Richard's silence were somehow connected, I wasn't going to sit and wait for someone else to explain it to me. I was going to find it myself. "All right, Mary," I said aloud to my reflection in the mirror. No more fear, no more crying. Let's finish this. I called Richard mid-morning. My voice was calm, too calm. Can you come by today? I want to go over something I found. He didn't hesitate. I'll be there within the hour. When he arrived, everything looked normal. His usual neat suit, his measured smile, that calm, dependable energy he carried everywhere. But now I saw something I hadn't noticed before. His eyes didn't meet mine as quickly. His movements were a little too careful. "Mary," he said, sitting across from me, "you sound upset. What happened?" I slid the brown envelope across the table. This happened. The moment he saw my husband's handwriting, something flickered in his face. Guilt, recognition, maybe both. "Where did you find this?" he asked quietly. "In his study," I said, "under the drawer." "Did you ever see this?" He hesitated, then sighed. Sigh. "Yes," he admitted softly. "I did." I felt the air leave my lungs. "And you didn't tell me? Because it wasn't meant for you to find then," he said. "He wrote that when he was sick. He didn't trust anyone at that time, not even himself. He thought the medicine was being tampered with. I tried to get him help, but he refused to see a doctor outside the family." My heartbeat quickened. "Tampered with? What do you mean?" Richard leaned back, his voice steady but heavy. "Your husband was paranoid those last few months, Mary. He was convinced someone was giving him the wrong pills. He accused me once, and then he accused the housekeeper. But the truth is, he was overdosing himself, mixing medication for sleep and stress. I didn't want you to remember him that way." Ha ha ha, my laugh came out shaky. "You mean you decided what kind of truth I could handle?" Again, he looked pained. "I was trying to protect you." I slammed my hand on the table, the sound sharp, loud, final. "Protect me?" "Richard, every time someone protected me, I ended up in more pain. My son broke my arm. My husband lied to me. And now you kept secrets that changed everything. For a long time he said nothing, just sat there, quiet, his jaw tight, his eyes fixed on me. Then, softly, he said, 'You're right.' That surprised me. He stood, walked toward the window and said, 'I've made mistakes. I thought I was doing what was best. But if you want every piece of truth, you'll have it.' He turned, and for the first time, I saw a man stripped of his armor, tired, older, honest. 'Your husband didn't die alone, Mary. I was there.' My breath caught. 'What?' He nodded. 'He called me that night. Said he wasn't feeling well. By the time I got there, he was already unconscious. I called for help, but it was too late. I stayed until the ambulance came. I never told you because he asked me not to. He said he didn't want you to see him like that.' The sound tore out of me before I could stop it. I covered my mouth, shaking. He was alone all these years, and I thought I was the one left behind." Richard's voice softened. "He loved you, Mary. Even at the end he loved you. That's the truth I should have told you." For a long time the room was silent, except for my quiet sobs and the ticking clock. Then I looked up at him and said, "The owner knew about this, Richard." "She told Robert." "How?" He frowned. "She must have gotten it from somewhere. Old hospital records, court files, or someone who worked for me." "So you're saying it wasn't just about stealing my money," I whispered. "She was digging into everything. My life, my past, my husband." Richard nodded. "Over both of us. She used what she found to turn us against each other. It's what people like her do. They plant one seed of doubt and let it grow." I wiped my eyes. "Well, the seeds are dead now." He smiled faintly. I sat in the garden. The sky was painted orange and pink. The air warm, gentle. The same garden where Robert used to play, where I'd planted roses with my husband years ago. One rose bush was blooming again, the one that had stopped after he died. I touched a petal, soft as breath, and whispered, "You see, I'm still here." Ha 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 ha. It came out quiet, peaceful this time. Robert came by later that night. No drama this time. No tears. He just sat beside me, watching the sky darken. Good. Let her ashes stay where they belong. He hesitated. "Do you forgive me, Mom?" I took his hand, the same one that had once hurt me, and squeezed it gently. Forgiveness isn't a switch, Robert. It's a road. But tonight we're walking the same way again. That's enough. He nodded, his eyes glassy. We sat there in silence as the stars began to show, two broken people finding a strange kind of peace in the quiet. Weeks later, I stood outside the courthouse again, this time not for a trial, not for revenge, just for closure. Richard walked beside me, carrying the final case file to seal Leona's record permanently. "She won't be able to contact you again," he said softly. "I know," I replied, "but I'm not afraid anymore." He smiled. "You shouldn't be." I looked up at the sky, breathing deep. The air felt cleaner somehow, lighter. My arm still ached on cold days, but it was a reminder, not a wound. They broke my arm, they broke my heart, and they almost broke my mind, but I survived. And now, when I look at my scars, I don't see pain anymore. I see proof that no matter how dark life gets, I still rise. If this story touched you, even a little, leave a comment, my dear, and remember, you deserve peace, love, and respect. Take care of your heart. I'll see you in the next story.